Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Today we look at three armed robbers who helped a gun to their victim's head during a terrifying early hours raid on his home have been jailed. Joseph Grima, Lee Spindler and Jamie Sheffield are now behind bars following the robbery in the upmarket Cheshire village of Over Alderley. Chester Crown Court heard our 25-year-old victim was asleep in bed when he heard the gang coming up the stairs. He opened his eyes and saw one of them pressing a large black machete onto his cheek. The men then shouted, "Where are the guns?" while holding a gun to his face. Mr. Grima, Mr. Spindler and Mr. Sheffield then tied up the victim and ransacked the house before making off with 2 shotguns, 2 rifles, a cannabis plant, collector's coins and a mobile phone. After they fled the scene in 2 vehicles in the early hours, the homeowner called the police. At 5 AM, armed police followed a Nissan out of the Macclesfield area before stopping it in Salford. Officers arrested Mr. Spindler as he sat in the front passenger seat. Mr. Sheffield fled from the scene but was later arrested at a house nearby. The shotguns were later found on Turf Lane near Macclesfield town home ground. Mr. Grima's DNA was discovered on all of the stolen weapons and on the knot of a bin bag being used to stash the guns. 2 weeks later, Mr. Grima was arrested at his home in Macclesfield and his mobile phone was seized by police. In the early hours on the following day, he went on the run after fleeing handcuffed from Macclesfield District General Hospital, where he had been taken by police after complaining of feeling on. A huge manhunt was launched and Mr. Grima was later taken back into custody. Mr. Grima, 33, of Waiter Street, Macclesfield, was sentenced to life in prison and told he will serve a minimum of 10 years after he was found guilty of robbery and possessing an imitation firearm. He also pleaded guilty to additional offences of escaping custody and possessing mobile phones in prison. Mr. Spindler, 26, of no fixed address, was jailed for 9 years and 8 months after pleading guilty to possessing an imitation firearm and robbery. Mr. Sheffield, 33, of Eldon Place, Eccles, was sentenced to 12 years and 9 months in prison after pleading guilty to possessing an imitation firearm and robbery. Speaking after sentencing, Detective Sergeant Simon Mills of Macclesfield CID said, "These men broke into the victim's house in the middle of the night with the intention of terrifying him. They held weapons to his face and subjected him to threats which left him with no choice but to give in to their demands." Throughout the incident, the victim was left in fear of what the gang would do to him, to the point he feared if he would survive. This was a pre-planned robbery using weapons, namely a handgun, machetes and knives, and it was intended to instill the utmost fear into the victim or anybody who got in their way. Mr. Grima has shown no regard for the court process, victims or justice throughout the investigation. He intentionally tried to prevent his trial going ahead by threatening prosecution witnesses and has seen justice served where he will pay the price for his own actions. Mr. Grima is a dangerous individual, as we heard in the trial, has previous convictions for like offences. It is clear he had not learnt from previous offending and he fully deserves his lengthy time in prison. So what are your thoughts about this 3-man robbery group who held a machete to the victim's face while shouting threats as to where the goods they were looking for were in the house? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us and until next time, stay safe.